Bengals, by the way, have some serious decisions to make this offseason. T. Higgins is a free agent, and both Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson have 1 year remaining on their current deals. Since he does have some money to spend, $53 million in cap space, ranks 11th in the league, and they have the 17th overall pick in this year's draft, something to keep in mind there. Now, Duke Tobin told the Cincinnati Enquirer this on Jamar Chase, quote, "It's a priority for us. It's something we feel like there's a framework to work off of. Should be a pretty easy framework to work off of. Guys in his position have recently redone contracts. We believe in Jamar. He's very important to us." He added this on Trey Hendrickson. "He's earned a pay raise and a bump and an extension. He has. We're cognizant of that, and we'll give that to him. But whether we agree on what that looks like is what is to be determined." Now, Adam, let's start with you. How are the Bengals approaching these two as well as T. Higgins in the offseason?
Well, Laura, it's a good thing they have all the cap space they do because they're going to have a lot of expenditures. We start with Jamar Chase. I think you're looking at a deal in the neighborhood of about $40 million a year. That's what he's going to be looking for, and we'll see if the two sides can figure out a way to get that done. Clearly, they want him back, as they should want him back. He's as good as any wide receiver in football, one of the best players in the league, and they're going to want to get that deal done. And I'm going to guess that deal is somewhere around $40 million per year. Trey Hendrickson has been in search of a new deal since last year when he asked for a trade and didn't get it. And so he's going to want to be paid top dollar. And meanwhile, T. Higgins is scheduled to become a free agent. Now, they could put the franchise tag on him. I don't know what that solves long term and if that will make him happy. But one thing to keep in mind here, T. Higgins hired an agent that represents Jamar Chase. So the same agent is operating with both wide receivers as he deals with Cincinnati this offseason. That could make things interesting. That may be one way to keep them all together, but certainly it is not going to be cheap to get that done.
That's pretty interesting about T. Higgins and Jamar Chase having the same agent now. All right, we'll dive into that maybe later. But, Dan, what would you prioritize here? I think it's pretty simple, but...
I think there's a 0% chance Jamar Chase plays elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no shot that Joe lets him leave. I don't think there's any shot the Bengals let him leave. He's probably going to go for $160 plus, $125 million guaranteed, because that's a little bit more than Justin got. I don't think you can keep Joe, Jamar, and T at the value that T is going to get. Because then you start to really risk following almost a Dolphins path of paying the two receivers and the quarterback. You're not going to beat a lot of teams unless you draft incredibly well. So I think you're prioritizing Jamar and Trey Hendrickson because also, again, one, the building a football team. Joe and Jamar were unbelievable this year and you didn't get the playoffs. And then two, you got to go get Lamar and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. At some point, the other people doing that part of your football team are that's as big a deal as T. Higgins opposite Jamar, and I love T.
Yeah, and that's the difficult part or difficult place that the Cincinnati Bengals are now in, that you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both up at the same time. I think Jamar plays there no matter what. He's not going to get an opportunity to walk out of that building. And listening to what Duke Tobin said, though, I think he's going to have to throw that framework out the window. Jamar Chase wanted to operate under that framework last year, and you go out and you win the Triple Crown. He's definitely going to not only beat Justin Jefferson's contract, but like he said last year, I'm going to beat the crap out of him. And on the other side, you add Al Golden, who I got to know really well this year as the coordinator for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They want to play man-to-man. They want to get after you with four up front. You need Trey Hendrickson to do that. No one in the world did that as well, at high of a level as Trey Hendrickson did. And so he's going to be imperative to bring back into that locker room as well. And so to me, that leaves T. Higgins the odd man out.
You know what throws a wrench in the T. Higgins thing real quick? One, Yoshi Vosh is like a good player, but he's not obviously T. Higgins. They drafted Burton out of Alabama.
Yeah.
Big hopes for him, and he was,
but had some off the field issues as well.
So that's a huge pivot at the receiver
spot. They do have the 17th pick in the draft, but I don't know if that's where they'd go at that position.
It's such a shame because when Chase Higgins are on the field together, up there with any offense in the NFL, and you can win games that way. And also, T. Higgins' skill set in particular is such a nice match with Joe Burrow. You got a quarterback who is incredibly accurate throwing downfield and a receiver who catches everything. Yeah. It's a real shame, but Tan, to your point at the beginning, parting ways with T it's less about how valuable he is to the Bengals and more about how valuable he is to another team, in my imagination. Because looking at this free agent group, there's some good free agents. Chris Godwin comes to mind. You got Stephon Diggs coming off the injury. He's clearly the one. He is clearly the type of number one X receiver that teams like the Patriots, the Chargers, both of whom have more cap space than the Bengals, Washington, the Panthers. There's just too many bidders for his services, and if he wants to maximize his value, and no one's going to hold that against him, he's probably not going to do it.
And if you watch when he gets the one-on-one matchup, he's a winner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Too consistently.
Burrow's QBR 78 with Higgins on the field. In 2024, it dropped to 68 with Higgins out of the game this year.
Steve Wilks, the former 49ers defensive coordinator, former interim head coach in Carolina, has accepted the defensive coordinator job under Aaron Glenn in New York. And Aaron Glenn doesn't want to call the defense. He's planning to turn over that responsibility to Steve Wilks, so it's a nice opportunity for a guy who sat out of football last year, one of the classier guys around.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see him in New York. More from Adam throughout the show as well. And let's talk about Wilks. He's going to have to turn around a defense that was significantly worse last season than it was in 2023. Last year, New York ranked in the bottom half of the league in efficiency, total QBR, touchdown-interception ratio, and first downs allowed per game. They ranked in the top 4 in each of those categories in 2023. Just a remarkable downturn. RC, how do you like the match of Wilks with Aaron Glenn? You heard Adam saying there, Glenn doesn't want to call the defense. How do you like that match in those two guys in New York?
Well, to me, they're a little different in approach, but I believe that Steve Wilks is an excellent defensive coordinator. I also know that he's a great leader of men. And although the Jets didn't focus on it like Jerry Jones did with Brian Schottenheimer, Aaron Glenn is also a first-time head coach. Yeah. So now you bring in a defensive coordinator who does have head coaching experience, not only in Arizona where he was only there for a year, but he did an amazing job as the interim head coach of the Carolina Panthers and had an opportunity to get that job. And so it's great to have someone on the coaching staff that you can lean on for certain decisions and understandings of how you want to run things. So I believe that this is great for Aaron Glenn. He doesn't have to focus on the defense, but also has someone to bounce things off of that understands the position that he's now in.
Yeah, that's a great point about his leadership background and that coaching background. I really like it from that angle. I like that Aaron Glenn is giving up some responsibility so he can focus on kind of the CEO aspect of being a head coach. I'm interested in seeing how it plays out from a football perspective because the two coaches have not worked together. And there has been some similarities and, some differences between their defense. Here's one primary difference. Aaron Glenn we associate with playing a ton of man coverage both in Detroit previously with the New Orleans Saints. Not so with Steve Wilks going back to before he was with San Francisco when he was with Carolina and was really running his defense much more zone heavy, lots of quarters, which actually is what the Jets did with Robert Saleh. He does blitz a lot, which is something that Aaron Glenn likes to do, but I'm interested in seeing kind of how those different backgrounds come together because we're talking about two defensive coaches from different coaching trees.
It's also sort of cool, though. You watch Quincy Wilson, in my opinion, start to excel as a blitzer last year once you couldn't get the pressure. So you do wonder how those things marry.
You guys like the fact that he's given up play calling as a head coach?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think sometimes, especially as first-time head coaches, you don't understand what the intensity of the load of carrying both of those things are like. And I do believe as far as a defensive coach, you're used to focusing on that one thing where I feel like offensively you get more of a feel for the entire team.
You can also always take it back.
You
keep that you keep that option open.
Yeah, I think the contrast of styles will be interesting. They got to re-sign DJ Reed. I think if that you want to make sure that Sauce Gardner had a down year. That's accurate to say. I think everybody on their defense had a down year. I think they want to make sure that having DJ Reed, who's such a solid corner opposite Sauce, is a big deal. Isaiah Oliver played some meaningful snaps for them this year. I would have liked Aaron Glenn to remain a little bit more in control of the defense. I think the contrast of style and who wins out stylistically and scheme-wise will be fascinating to see because Aaron Glenn got the job because of the way that they dominated on defense in Detroit with their aggression. I don't think you can live in that world in a zone-centric defense.
I guess I just don't know if he got the job for that. I believe he got the job because of the way that he led in and the way that guys continued to play under him last year, even though they had so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball.
You got to think, too, though, like, they're going to mesh their scenes together, right? Like, I bet Aaron Glenn has a little more say in it than we think. We'll see. We'll find out. Wilks 49ers defense, by the way, ranked 3rd in the NFL in points allowed in 2023. That was the last time we saw him out there.